Today is the day. Super Bowl 60 has arrived. We have the Seattle Seahawks versus the New England Patriots. A rematch of Super Bowl 49. Who's going to win? So the Seahawks are favored by 4.5 points right now. And in Super Bowl 48, the Broncos were favored. The Broncos got their asses kicked in Super Bowl 48. For those of us who kind of suspect that since betting's been legal, the Mafia has basically taken over and the NFL might be rigged. And if it is, I expect to see some real fuckery from the refs tonight, and the Seahawks will probably lose. But if Vegas is aware that people are onto them, they might have it to where the Seahawks actually win. Because the Seahawks are the better team. They face better competition, and they're not only a top five offense, but they're also a top five defense. You can argue that it's the same for the Patriots, but the Patriots' numbers are inflated because of the opponents that they faced. So let's start with common opponents, right? Common opponents that they both faced throughout the season: the Steelers, the Buccaneers, and who else? Damn. Oh, the Texans. Sorry. Okay, the Texans. They faced in the Patriots faced them in the offseason, in the postseason. Seahawks faced them in the regular season. All right. So what happened in those games? So Seahawks take on the Steelers in week 2. They beat them down by a score of 31-17. The following week, the New England Patriots take on the Steelers and they lose 21-14. That's your first indicator that Seattle's a better team. Then Seattle also faces the Texans when the Texans were doing pretty much their best on defense all year. And the Seahawks put up 27 points on them. And the Texans scored 19. And when the Patriots faced them, the Patriots put up 28. And I think the Texans scored 16. Let's verify. Ah, yeah, 16 points. The difference here is the Seahawks only allowed the Texans to score 12 points on offense. The extra touchdown that the Texans scored was because of a Sam Darnold strip sack fumble in the end zone, which gave the defense a touchdown for the Texans. That didn't happen against the Patriots. So when you think about it, the Seahawks allowed 12 points to the Patriots allowing 16. The Patriots scored one more point. That's a point differential of 3 in favor of the Seahawks in that same game. Let me verify because I can't remember. Oh, uh, Panthers. That's another team we both faced. The Seahawks faced the Panthers at the end of the season when they were actually heating back up. Seahawks beat them 27-10 in their house. They went into the Panther Stadium and beat them 27-10. So when the Patriots played the Panthers, they played them at home in their own stadium, and they beat them 42-13. The Panthers have been really bad on the road. This whole season, the Panthers have been really bad on the road. So that's not really saying a lot in favor of the the Patriots in that one either. Okay, both teams faced the Saints. The Patriots went with the Saints 25-19. The Seahawks beat the Saints by what was it, 42 to like 10 or 7 or some shit like that. Seahawks destroyed the Saints, like worse than any other team had all season, except for the Rams. They both faced the Titans. All right, the Titans did better against the Seahawks than they did against the Patriots. The Patriots scored 31, Titans were 13. Seahawks also scored, I think, 31 on them and allowed 27. The Titans were really playing their asses off in that game. They had a good game. But that's one where it kind of goes in favor of the Patriots. The Buccaneers, that's the other one. So the Buccaneers faced the Seahawks when the Buccaneers were at their strongest and when Seattle was at their weakest. That game was a shootout. It wound up being 38-35 Broncos or Buccaneers, sorry. But in that game, Seattle started missing 4 of their secondary players, their top secondary players. By the end of the first quarter and a half, they had lost 6 of their defensive starters. And that game still was a shootout between the Buccaneers and the Seahawks, in which the Buccaneers barely came out on top by a last second field goal. So when the Patriots faced the Buccaneers, they had been playing like shit. They faced in week 10. The Buccaneers started playing like shit in like week 6, week 7. They had so many injuries that they couldn't do anything. And for some reason, Baker Mayfield was playing like shit. They beat the Buccaneers at a score of 28-23 when they were playing like shit. That's not saying a lot. And then they got to face the Jets. And then they got to face the Bengals and the Giants. And then they faced the Bills twice. They beat the Bills barely the first time. And then the Bills came back and beat them the second time after being down by like 24 points in the first half. So I'm not going to sit here and say that that's a great accomplishment. The Bills were not that great this year. They had no run defense and they couldn't throw the ball very well. So any competent team on running the ball and stopping the run or stopping the pass was going to be able to have a chance to beat the Bills. That's not a great accomplishment. They played the Ravens. The Ravens have sucked all year. The Ravens were a shell of their former selves this whole year. Then they played the Jets again. Then the Dolphins. So basically, what I'm saying is the Patriots have had the easiest schedule in the NFL. Even in the playoffs, they faced the Chargers, who were okay, but not great. I would pick the Bears over the Chargers any game. I would pick the 49ers to beat the Chargers. I would pick the Rams to smoke the Chargers. So that was a good win for them in the way they managed to win it. However, they only scored 16 points on the Chargers. Granted, they only allowed 3 points from the Chargers. But like I said, the Chargers, they weren't that great this year. They were like, I want to say they were 11th or 12th in offense, whereas Seattle is number 3 in offense. That's a big fucking difference. Their defense was maybe number 7 or number 8. Seattle's defense number 1. So then they faced the Texans, who have the number 2 defense. And I already covered that game. They were 28-16, but Seattle also beat them 27 to what should have been 12. But Darnold had that stupid fucking moment in the end zone where he dropped the ball and they recovered in the end zone. So it wound up being 19-27, but it wasn't really 19-27. It was 12-27. So there's that. And then they played the Broncos with their backup quarterback and beat them by a score of 10-7. The Seahawks had to face the 49ers 3 times this year. The first time they played was in week 1 when the 49ers were at full strength pretty much. The only player they were missing was Brandon Ayuk, who didn't show up the entire season. But they had George Kittle, they had Christian McCaffrey, and on defense they had Fred Warner, and on defense they had Nick Bosa. Nick Bosa went down in the second game. So no other team had to play them with Nick Bosa. Fred Warner went down in like the third game for the season, fourth game maybe. So no other team had to play that. I would have said the 49ers should have been in the NFC Championship if they were full strength for throughout the season with a good chance to win the Super Bowl. Seattle faces them 3 times. Then Seattle faces the Rams 3 times. Now, the Rams had a couple surprise losses against the Panthers and some other weird team beat them. However, the Rams are capable of being the best team in the NFL on any week. And the Seahawks managed to beat them 2 out of 3 times. Seahawks beat the 49ers 2 out of 3 times. So basically, Seattle is the better team. By all accounts, they should win this game. When it comes to scoring, which is what they used to use to determine how good a team was, what they were scoring on offense, and how many scores they allowed on defense. On offense, Seattle's number 3 in scoring. On defense, Seattle's number 1 in scoring. Anytime in the past where you had that combination, that team won the Super Bowl. So by that account, the Seahawks should win the Super Bowl. Because I don't think the Patriots are really a top 5 defense. They are probably a top 7 defense, but their defensive line is ranked number 15. And if you look at all the teams that Seattle's faced, the only teams that beat Seattle had a D line ranked in the top 8. So anytime Seattle has faced a 9th or lower ranked defensive line, Sam Darnold has had himself a day. I expect the same thing to be able to happen here. However, like I said, the NFL is rigged, especially the Super Bowls. So I expect some fuckery from the refs, and the Patriots will probably win because Vegas wants their money. Now, hopefully, if Vegas sees that people are understanding that this is what's probably going to happen, they won't interfere and let the game play out as it should, and the Seahawks will win. But I'm saying, FBI, pay attention to this game because you went after the NBA for rigging the games. Now go after the NFL because I think they're rigging the games too. If you're going to legalize sports betting, you have to make sure that the betting is actually appropriate and not all messed up. So, FBI, watch these motherfuckers because they're probably going to be cheating. But then again, you're probably working with them, so I wouldn't expect much from you. All right. That's my decision. I think the Seahawks should win, but I think some tomfuckery is going to happen and the Patriots are going to wind up winning. Unless Vegas realizes that people are onto them, then the Seahawks will win. That's my game for Super Bowl 60. Have a great fucking weekend.